Hello and welcome to the National Leadership Briefing. My name is Doug Sharp and I will be your host for today. Well, for today's briefing, I'm going to make sure we get right out of the chute here and date stamp this briefing. It is September of 2022, and you are on the National Leadership Briefing. This is a monthly briefing, 1 hour maximum, no more. We always get you in and out at the top of the hour, respecting your time. We also touch base with you midweek between the briefings to ensure that you're kept up to date. However, today, this briefing is date stamped because I want you to know this is possibly the most important national leadership briefing that I believe we have done since we began several years ago. And the reason for that is because the decisions that you and I have to make and the questions that we have to ask ourselves and others are critically important, and we need to answer them correctly. And if we don't get this right and we make mistakes on the immediate road ahead, then we will most certainly compromise or potentially compromise the success of our mission. Now, so that is where we're going to start today, is we're going to start today with a review of what our mission is. We're going to look at the mission objectives of the National Leadership Briefing, and I'm also going to provide for you a real-time example, very recent real-time example of how I communicated those mission objectives to someone else. And this is an important part of the plan, is that you need to be able to, first of all, understand and internalize what the mission objectives are, the reason why we're here doing what we're doing the way we're doing it, and then how to communicate that to other people. That's critical. But we're also going to be then rolling into what I believe is probably the most critical part of the plan related to you and your role in the plan. So we're going to be talking about you also today and what you need to be focusing on the immediate road ahead, ensuring the success of our mission. And then finally, we're going to take a look at, again, a little closer look at those decisions that you and I have to make on the road ahead and the backdrop, the all-important backdrop that exists behind us as we consider the answers to these questions, because you and I have many different ways that we can answer the questions that are posed to us. There are many different ways that you and I can respond when things come at us, but it's important that we do so in an understanding the context of the circumstances we are in and the times that we are in. So understanding the times is the last part of the National Leadership Briefing today. We're going to review that. And then at the very end, of course, I want to wind up with a bit of a tribute and a thank you to somebody who's gifted the National Leadership Briefing something very special. And I want to show it to you and just give a shout out to the individual who shared it with us. Okay, so I hope you're excited about what we've got to go over today. I know that you're going to be with us only for 1 hour, and I value your time, going to respect it and make sure that every moment of your time today is well used. Thank you again. Let's go to this video though first before we come back, and then we'll get right into the mission objectives. God bless. Take care. Okay, let's get started. We have a lot to cover today, so let's move forward, first of all, with a review of the mission objectives. Now, for those of you who are brand new on the National Leadership Briefing today, and because of the structure and the way that we launch it and share the national leadership briefing. That's pretty much every single briefing. I just wanted to let you know, please don't get overwhelmed by what it is that we're going over here today. There's lots of time for you to get ramped up in your knowledge and understanding of these things. However, I am stressing the responsibility of internalizing and becoming competent at sharing these things right away, because it is a goal that you must have. Is once you join the briefing and you gather this information together, it's in your best interest. It's in the best interest of us collectively, and it helps us all achieve our mission objectives more quickly or much easier if you bring your level of competence up as quickly as possible. However, no rush. Just no pressure, just encouraging you to do your very best to internalize what I'm about to share and then become competent in sharing it. Okay, so first of all, what are our mission objectives here on the National Leadership Briefing? Well, right here over my shoulder, you see something called the 4-pillar mandate, and you see 4 pillars identified. The first one is very clear, that parents have the right to raise their children the way they want. The second is that those we elect to serve us in civil government must respect and defend our right of belief and freedom of religion. The third one is that the laws and policies of civil government must provide for the safety and security of the citizen, especially the vulnerable that live among us in our communities. And finally, that it is inappropriate for civil government to heap debt upon the backs of our children and future generations. I say these things, and I have this banner here behind me, because these 4 things are what we are working to advance into the spheres of society, culture, politics, and government. We want to be able to effectively communicate these as priorities to us all as we come together. And when we do come together, it's in fact these 4 things that we rally around. So the reason why I bring that up right off the get-go is because if you see something that is happening on the National Leadership Briefing that does not serve the advancing of these principles into these spheres that I've identified, then we're off base. We have gone off track. Now, thankfully, I have many people that keep an eye on me and ensure that I stay on track throughout this period of time. So me, myself, everything that I do here on the briefing is I'm just here to advance these principles into other spheres like your sphere of influence. And it is my hope that you duplicate my efforts by looking for opportunities for you locally to share and to advance these principles into your sphere of influence. You know people I don't know, other people know people that you don't know, and we want to reach out and touch people with these principles. And when I say advance them, I want you to share them with other people in a positive way, with a positive message that where they kind of see an alignment in themselves. If you say to somebody, hey, do you believe that parents should have the right to raise their children the way they want? The minute they go, yeah, that makes sense to me, then you have a point of agreement, and you have now established an opportunity to build an ally and grow and advance these principles into other spheres. So that is our mission, our primary mission objective right there. If anybody suggests that we're doing anything different around here, then it is my error. I accept responsibility for that, because I try to stay on point all the time. Now, I promised you when I first opened the briefing today that I was going to give you a real-time example of how it is that I capitalized on an opportunity to advance these principles of the 4 pillars into my own sphere of influence, because I'm just an individual person just like you, and I'm out there looking around all the time for people that I can share this with. Now, I had an opportunity to speak with someone who was holding a training session for candidates he was running training for municipal candidates in the province of Ontario. And he asked me if I could share with the candidates as part of the training anything that I felt might benefit them in advancing or moving their campaigns along. So what I did was, I'm just going to, and this is something you can do at any time in any other opportunity you have. You can duplicate what I'm about to share with you. Is what I did was I actually went to the National Leadership Briefing website. That's nlbcanada.ca. And I printed off on the website, there's a section called the NLB Essentials. These are essentials. We call it the foundation of training for you and for me and for anybody that we share this with. We always say, send people to the NLB Essentials webpage on the National Leadership Briefing website, and you will find something called the 4 Pillar Story. And it's actually the story of where these 4 pillars came from. I mean, because here they are on a banner right behind my desk, but they didn't just like magically appear in my office one day. They came from somewhere. The actual concepts, the principles, the wording, everything came from somewhere. So the story is actually written and shared on the National Leadership Briefing website. So all I did was I went to the website, I printed off a copy of the story, and then when I had an opportunity to participate in the training, I offered this, what I'm about to share with you, as intelligence. I shared it as intel, and I said, if you're a candidate, this might be important for you to know about, because you're going to be talking to people out there on the street and trying to get yourself elected. So why don't I share the National Leadership Briefing 4 Pillar Story with you as to where these things came from, because it might benefit you. See, I capitalized on an opportunity to advance the principles of the 4 pillars into the sphere of politics and potentially government if they're elected, right? So let me read this story to you in a way that you can read it yourself. I'm not a magical, I don't have this memorized. I actually read it myself. I'll read it right off of you. I'll tell you the story. In the fall of 2016, a series of surveys started going out across the country to leaders and centers of influence within the faith communities of Canada. So that's where we started. The surveys asked questions about what the faith community leaders believed were the issues and challenges that they were facing in their communities. It asked what were their priorities and what was important to them. So you can see how candidates might have an interest in understanding what's important to the people that are being surveyed. Its intelligence is the framework or the context that I shared this in. One important part of the ask in the surveys, though, was that faith leaders would share their feedback only on the issues they felt completely comfortable discussing with their church families or to others within their centers of influence. We also asked in the surveys if they had other issues that they wanted to share, that they could also express them using language that was secular, so that they could share it with people outside of their sphere of influence or people who perhaps didn't go to church. So again, this is a large cross-section of people that were asked a lot of questions about what's important to them. The responses, it says here on the page, were overwhelming. Human trafficking, prostitution, pornography, euthanasia, marijuana legislation, abortion, polyamorous relationship, education, freedom of religion, child protection, gender theory, debt and taxation, just to name a few. Anything and everything you can imagine was mentioned in the responses we received. But here is where something very interesting was noted. When you stood back and looked at all of these issues and points of view expressed in all of the individual issues, the way they were expressed could all be categorized into what were called silos or groups. So the issue of prostitution law, for example, was often expressed as a concern for vulnerable young women and girls. And when you looked at another issue such as abortion policy, the very same concern was paramount, the well-being of women and young girls. Another example, common concerns related to the future of our children were clear when you held up an issue like education and parental authority up against the issue of excessive government debt and taxation. A common concern were expressed in all of those issues for children and future generations and the negative impact that these fiscal challenges would have on families. So ultimately, it was discovered that virtually all of the issues and concerns expressed in the survey results could actually be reduced down and filed into 4 silos, or what have come to be known as pillars. So these are the pillars. First, of course, that parents have the right to raise their children the way they want. So it was something that it says here, parents just wanted to be free to raise their children with the same values and in the same faith tradition. That was all. So simply expressed, but clearly a priority to those who responded. Now, I'm going to stop right there and just tell you, I'm talking to a bunch of candidates because I've actually got this opportunity to speak to candidates and their campaign teams. But this could be your next door neighbor. This could be a question that you could ask. You could ask and just say, hey, do you have this desire inside of you to also raise your children the way they want, the way you want? You just want to raise your kids in the same faith tradition and with the same values that perhaps your parents raised you. Asking people these questions is a great way to gather intel from them and find that common ground and establish the common ground that you're going to stand on together moving forward. So then there, of course, you see this third pillar. You can also talk to them about the value of taking care of vulnerable citizens in the community. And it just goes through the whole story. It just goes right through here. So it says here, for example, finally, the fourth pillar, which we call a very sensible posture related to finances, that it's inappropriate for civil government to heap debt upon the backs of our children and future generation. So it says here, so government spending money today, calling it an investment in our children's future, when really what it is structural debt that will carry an interest rate long into the life of our children, is unacceptable fiscal policy. Well, I think you can find plenty of people out there, if the primary mission objective is to advance these principles into society and culture, for example, and in your society and in your community, there are parents who are concerned about the debt load of government. I think you'll find many allies within your community who share that same concern. So these four things, it says, are the things that we focus on here at the National Leadership Briefing. And this is where I introduced to them that not only is this something that's very important and something that is important to you, there's many of us out there across the nation who share your same concerns and value these same things. And we all come together. They're, in fact, the pillars that we say we rally around. So we come together once a month and we rally around these four pillars as part of our primary mission objective to advance them into society, culture, politics, and government. And when civil government, it says here, proposes a piece of legislation, it's these points that we hold that legislation up against to ensure that it is aligned with our views and values. When a politician speaks, it says here, it's now the litmus test for whether or not we're listening to someone in government who understands our worldview and will defend our right to have it. And if a government leader enacts a policy that limits our right as parents, for example, to raise our children the way we want, then we look for new government leaders. So that's the engagement part of it. If civil government leaders recklessly pass a law that puts vulnerable people in our community at risk, then we withdraw support from them and place it in another person's camp. Now, you can see if I'm talking to a candidate, how when I say something like that to them, I am attempting to influence them to understand that the vulnerability of people within our communities is of paramount importance to us. And that if they do things that are contradictory to protecting vulnerable citizens, then we will withdraw our support. And finally, with our children in mind, when government spends so much money that a yoke of excessive taxation is placed on the backs of our children, forcing them to pay for it, then we're going to make a change. So we're stressing with people that we know. We're stressing with people within our community, within our sphere of influence, what it is that we value. And at the same time, we're looking to build alliances with them so that they will come together with us and our voice becomes stronger because there's more of us working together to advance these things. Now, here is the crux of it, though, and the most important part of the mission objective. We're also always looking on the horizon for opportunities where we can advance these things into these spheres. So I took advantage of an opportunity I had presented on it, but I will also be bringing opportunities to you, which is why we come together on the National Leadership Briefing once a month, is because I'm always scanning the horizon for those opportunities where we can all work together, where we can rally together around the things that we believe in, and we could use our combined voice, our combined influence to speak loudly about the things that we believe in. So that is extremely important to do, is that we not only look for alliances in our own sphere of influence, but we bring them together, all of us, for those all-important opportunities, which we're going to talk about a couple of them today and bring you some examples. But that's what I really wanted to share with you to this point about the mission objectives of the National Leadership Briefing, so that you can fully understand why it is we're here, doing what we're doing, the way we're doing it. Well, thanks so much for letting me share that today. I'm excited about you grabbing a hold of that. Go to the National Leadership Briefing website. Look at the National Leadership Briefings web page called Essentials, NLB Essentials. You'll find four videos there that are absolutely fantastic. They're very short, and it will give you a solid foundation of understanding as to all of these things I just spoke about here today. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll come right back here, because I definitely want to move on to this next segment, because it's important that you understand why you are such a critical part of this entire plan. God bless. Talk to you in a moment. These are the things that we believe in. First, that parents have the right to raise their children the way they want. Second, that those we elect to serve us in civil government must respect and defend our right of belief and freedom of religion. Number three, that the laws and policies of civil government must provide for the safety and security of the citizens, especially the vulnerable among us. And number four, that it is inappropriate to heap debt upon the backs of our children and future generations. They came from you. They're your pillars. They're the things that you believe. Okay, let's keep moving forward now. What I wanted to do now is to make sure that you are clear on the most important part or component of our plan for us to successfully achieve our mission objectives. We want to make sure that we accomplish what it is that we're setting out to do. But there's one part that if we don't get this right, then unfortunately, we are going to be just spinning our wheels and wasting a lot of time. So let me make sure that we're clear on that moving forward here. Okay. This behind me is called the U-Training video template. Now you're going to find, remember that website that I told you about, nlbcanada.ca? That's where you find the 4-pillar story that I just read, but you're also going to find those other 4 videos on the NLB Essentials webpage at that website. And in that section, one of the videos is called the U-Training video, and this is the training template that I go over in that video. But I'm going to just give you this context. I'm going to share this whole thing with you, because within this is the most important part, what I'm talking about as being the critical component to ensure our mission success. So in the U-Training video, we talk about, of course, the importance of you. You are critically important to the plan. You need to be engaged for us to achieve our mission objective. True. But we also need you. If you see that little arrow pointing out of the top of your head, imagine it there. We also need to ensure that you are aligned with God's view of things, that you, as you make all of the decisions about how you're going to respond and react, that you're doing so in alignment with God's perspective of not only you, but the world that you live in. So we encourage you to get into relationship with it. Do you see the P there? Get into relationship with a pastor or a priest or someone who can help you navigate and be a part of your life so that you can stay in alignment with God's view of things. Because we know, and through our experience and the things, is that when we venture out into society, culture, politics, and government, that we are much more successful and have an advantage if we're aligned with God's perspective on things. So that's why we say align yourself with God and get into relationship with a pastor or a priest. Now, we also on this side teach you about your authorities, and we talk about on the video the importance of your understanding what your citizen authority is. As a citizen of Canada, you obviously have authority that you can exercise. You also have something called constituent authority. There's also, of course, kingdom authority that we encourage pastors and church leaders to teach people in their congregations. And of course, one that we've been exercising most recently here on the National Leadership Briefing is political party authority. It's that extra authority that you can purchase in the form of a political party membership so that you can use that authority to make decisions about things like who will lead parties, who will become your elected representative locally, so you could participate with more influence with the additional authority within those processes. And of course, most recently, we've just added what we call the community resident authority. Now, this was brought to me by a dear friend of mine who recognized something that he was doing locally. And what he did was he joined his local community association, and he understands now that there is authority that you can actually have within your community by serving your community. It's not having tyrannical overreach over them. It's actually through service you have additional influence in your local community. So you have authorities as a resident within your community as well, if you choose to exercise them. Now, what we always teach here on the National Leadership Briefing is once you're positioned in the right place, understanding the authorities that you have with somebody working alongside of you, you have the capacity to, or the opportunity to increase your influence. You can actually increase your capacity to make positive change within the spheres of society, culture, politics, and government. So what we do is we teach you about your sphere of influence and help you to understand that you are within a sphere of influence. Everything around you can be influenced by you and the decisions you make and the actions that you take. And that, in fact, it goes one step further. We actually encourage you to accept the responsibility of being the center of your sphere of influence, making you a center of influence. Now, sometimes people go, wait, I'm no center of influence. No, believe me, you are. You are every day running into people all the time that you have the opportunity to influence, and you continue to carry the center of your sphere of influence around with you wherever you go, because you are the center of influence. Now, understanding that is critically important because this, in fact, is the most important part of the plan, is your sphere of influence. Now, what do I mean by that? We could spend all day, every day as individuals just going through life and taking what little we can contribute as far as an individual can, or as much as an individual can, to whatever degree we want to participate. But if we find allies, if we actually identify others who see the world the way we do, who share our views and values, who perhaps agree with us on the principles that undergird the four pillars, as we build these alliances with people within our sphere of influence, what we can do is increase our influence that we have. In fact, let's think of it this way, is if you get to go to the voting booth on election day and you can cast your one ballot, because that's the law, is you only get one ballot to vote in an election. But what happens if you encourage someone else to participate who share your views and values, and you stop on the way to the voting booth and you say, I will serve you by picking you up and driving you to the voting booth, and so you can cast your vote too? Then you have, in fact, doubled your influence just by that one thing. If that person wasn't necessarily going to vote in before, yet they share your views and values, you just all you're doing is serving them by picking them up. You can in fact double your influence. Now, what happens if you encourage them to bring a friend with them and have them waiting at their house when you pick them up? Then in fact, from there, you've now tripled your influence. So you can see how the importance of your sphere of influence in what we're hoping to achieve here and what our mission objectives are. If we want to achieve our mission objectives and have great influence in the spheres of society, culture, politics, and government, growing you and your capacity to increase your sphere of influence is a critical part of the plan. And one of the reasons why we started out today talking about the mission objectives and the 4-pillar story is because it is in fact the 4 pillars that you use to grow your influence. It is the 4 pillars you use to build your sphere of influence so that you are that much more of an impact in whatever it is that you participate in. You don't move as an individual now, you move as a group of individuals because it's not just you, you're serving others. Let me give you an example. If you called your member of parliament and you said, I wanted to communicate to you my views on the issues of, parental authority and right of belief and freedom of religion and protecting the vulnerable and my views on fiscal responsibility. If you said you want one meeting and you go into that meeting with your member of parliament, you sit down in front of their desk and share all that, then you can imagine or somehow quantify what you think is the influence you have over that member of parliament and the decisions they make moving forward, knowing that about you. Well, what if you had 30 friends that you all agreed ahead of time that these things are important to you, and you said, hey, is there any way that we can get together for a meeting? Now, just so you know, you going down to a member of parliament's office as an individual that's a likely event. But if you tell your member of parliament that you've got 30 people, he'll come to you or she'll come to you. That's how important, how much more influence that a member of parliament or a candidate would have and view you as having if you took the time to grow your sphere of influence simply by using the 4 pillars and the questions you can ask about those 4 pillars to find out where people are at and tell them that, look, we're going to advance these principles into society, culture, politics, and government. We're working with a large group of people doing it, and we are going to be doing that. And so do you want to join us? There's a whole bunch of people doing stuff all the time. That is a good way of introducing this to people, is through the 4-pillar story, like I did before, gathering them together and then moving as a group. You can see the advantage there. So this is the most important part of it. So if you're not actively grabbing a hold of the 4 pillars and taking it out there and sharing it with people, then you're missing an opportunity to grow your influence. Now, I'm not going to leave it there, though, because there's other things written on the board I want to just touch on, but make sure you realize I've already hit my peak here. This is the most important part of this board behind me. And we are now going to be going to things that are still important, but they're slightly less important to that. Okay, so remember that. That's the most important thing. Now let's talk about your CAG. This is a citizen action group. You're also going to find on the NLB Canada website, you're also going to find something called the CAG Ministries page. Now, many of us attend a local church. Many of us have pastors and priests in our life. Many of us do have ourselves and we try to stay aligned with God's views on things. So we have these relationships in place already. However, our pastors and our church leaders are overwhelmed by the sea of change that is happening around them all the time. So what we encourage you to do as an individual is to also go move forward into your church family leadership. You're like the leadership, only go to the pastor or the priest and just say, would it be okay if I served you here at the church by sharing with you opportunities where we could advance things like the family's right to, or the parents' right to raise their children the way they want, if we had saw opportunities where we could work to preserve and protect right of belief and freedom of religion, would you mind if I brought these opportunities to you? And if your pastor or your priest said, yeah, I would love it if somebody would help me out with that, then you could just say, great. But what we also do is on that page is we provide you with a video. If your pastor or priest is interested, we provide you with a video of another pastor who's already established a citizen action group ministry within their church and some of the advantages that they have found. So you give a little bit more information to your pastor about that, and then you continue to work with us on the National Leadership Briefing, where we continue to help you develop your CAG ministry. So this is your sphere of influence is, of course, the most important thing. But if you can serve your local church by helping the pastor navigate the complexities of society and things that are going on in society and culture, and submitting to their decisions on how they receive and respond to the information. This is important. You're not steering your church leader or your pastor. You're serving them with information, and they will help you to decide how to deal with it or work with it when it comes to serving the church family from there. But that's important. And of course, offering to include the National Leadership Briefing as a monthly tool to continue to teach, train, encourage, edify, uplift, move forward, scan the horizon, looking for those opportunities that we're going to share with you, where we can all work together nationally to advance these principles that undergird the 4 pillars. So I hope that's helpful for you today to understand. Again, get onto that nlbcanada.ca webpage. You're going to find those NLB Essentials webpage videos really good. You're also going to find the CAG ministry videos really good. The tools are right there at your fingertips. All you got to do is grab a hold of them so that you can grow your sphere of influence, the most important part of what it is that we're working on here. Now, I'm going to move right into another segment here right after this quick video, where I want to introduce to you somebody who did just that. There's a citizen spotlight segment that we're about to do that is an individual who actually did what we're talking and encouraging you to do. And I'm going to show you exactly how easy this is. I mean, this is totally doable. So let's come right back to that. I'm going to clear up the boards behind me, and we will be right back with you and introduce you to my special friend. Talk to you then. Bye for now.
It's time to wake up from our slumber
and stand together, united as one. One family, one body, one church.
We will not walk past the vulnerable.
Say nothing, do nothing, and turn a blind eye.
We are citizens of a great nation.
We are good Samaritans to our neighbors. You are not alone.
We are the largest unified voice in Canada. So we stand united. This is our rally cry. We are Christ to our nation. This is our battle cry. He shall have dominion from sea to sea, and from the river unto the ends of the earth. Righteousness will reign. Justice will prevail. We are united.
Okay, well, I'm excited to share this example with you today, because this is an individual who is, again, just like you and me. I mean, we're just looking for ways to gather people together around us and advance the things that we believe in. And sometimes it's into the sphere of politics. And so I'm excited now to introduce this gentleman to you. His name is Vince Byfield. He is from Alberta, and he is a citizen at large. Today's Citizen Spotlight segment. Well, thank you so much, Vince, for joining us today. I appreciate your time. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you, Doug?
Fantastic. And I'm so excited to have you here because what's happening in Alberta is not only important to the people and the residents of Alberta, but to our entire nation. So we're happy to shine a light on not only what's going on there, but the work that you're doing. Thank you for what you're doing. I'm excited about these events that you've got coming up. Can you, first of all, before we get into the events itself, give us a little context as to what exactly is happening in Alberta at that leadership level, that all-important leadership level within the United Conservative Party?
Right. Well, let's see now. A lot is happening. I'm not sure how much I can pack in here, but we're about to have a vote on the leadership of the United Conservative Party on October the 5th. The deadline to be a member to vote has come and gone. That was on the 12th of August. And it is really a critical time because there's much at stake.
Now, Jason Kenney now has resigned and he stepped down. The leadership race is on now. And by the way, just so you know, Vince, we've been actually tracking, encouraging people in Alberta to join the party. So hopefully many of the folks listening today from Alberta have their memberships in place, so they're eligible to vote. But we've got these candidates coming up, and we always get asked the question, of course, now, who's the best candidate? And this is one of the reasons why I'm excited about what you're doing in Alberta, because you, as just an individual citizen, saw this opportunity to choose the leadership within Alberta, and you as an individual decided that you were going to do something about it. And tell me about what you did, what you've done.
Well, I've been working with like-minded people in my area. So someone gave me some advice. They said, just Vince, if you want to see things change, and I did, I was very concerned. Just make invite 20 of your friends to your home and explain the problem. And then when you're done, ask each of those 20 to, in turn, invite 20 of their friends and meet a week or two later. So we did that. So I invited 20, and with couples, it worked out to about 35 or so. And then from that, one of the people said, let's meet at our house next time. And I asked everybody, and some people dropped off. Some people were not interested. The other people were more than interested. It's very much like Jesus talks about the seeds, right? Some fall to the wayside, some get in the brambles, but then there's those ones that take root and bring in. And so the next event, which was about 10 days later, we had 70 people there. And then we had another event about a few days later, and we had 175 people there. And then we had another event. All of this was within the span of a little more than a month. We had the head count was 475 people from 20, right? So it was really amazing to see. And so we've now talked to the various candidates. So here in Alberta, there's been a number of events where the candidates have met and debated with one another, be it online or in-person events. I wanted to do something a little different because most of Albertans who are paying attention to the events are pretty clear now on where the candidates stand. But I wanted to have a more in-depth one-on-one meetings with the candidates. So I reached out to Brian Jean and to Todd Lowen and to Travis Taves and to Rebecca Schultz and to Danielle Smith.
And these are all the candidates that are running for leadership of the party, right?
Yeah. And I asked if they would be open to coming to a dinner. So that's what we're doing. We have dinner with Brian Jean on September the 10th. We have dinner with Travis Taves on September the 14th. We have dinner with Todd Lowen on the 16th, on his birthday. And we have the 17th with dinner with Rebecca. And the one that was more of a challenge, because she has a lot of commitments already, was Danielle. So we wound up with dinner with Danielle on the 28th of September, which is about a week before the vote. So it's getting right under the wire. I
Right.
didn't
Now
hear
this is
that.
now this is interesting. Pardon me for interrupting, but I want to make sure this is clear. So you have your own views and values. You
Yeah.
reached out to 20 people that you knew that share your views and values
Well, I
and
think
asked
they should.
them to
I
do the
think they
same
should.
thing.
Yeah,
Right?
that's right. That's right. What I would do is I'd ask them, first, after the niceties, I'd just say, are you at all concerned with the way our province is going? And almost always they're concerned, right? If it's not one thing, it's another thing, or it's both things, right? So a lot of people are concerned over how our freedoms have been impacted during COVID.
Right.
Other people are concerned about are we getting a raw deal with Confederation, right? These are all big issues here in Alberta. So once I've established that, talk to them, get them, to just express their frustrations a little bit, then I say, well, would you be open to joining a few of my friends, because we're planning to do something about it? And I got a pretty good response, because I think that after a while, if you realize that complaining only goes so far.
Right. Okay, so now we've got now the event itself.
Yeah.
The first of the series of events, I should say, are coming up in September. And you can actually attend this event in person as an Albertan, but you can also join you by live stream, as I understand it.
Yeah, that's right. And because so yes, their dinner with the person that I'll be interviewing the candidate, and we're going to. Our group has put together a bunch of questions that we're asking all of them, and they'll know those in advance, and they're usually pretty accustomed to answering those questions by now, but we just want it on record. But I'm going to open with a question that is near and dear to me. I call there is this attitude of not discussing religion when it comes to politics, and I don't agree with that, right? I mean, we live in this day and age where it's okay to ask, what's your favorite hockey team, but not, where do you think, why we're here? Why are we on this earth? You can't ask that question. It seems a little weird. So I'm giving them a heads up, and I'm going to ask them to share with me and with the dinner guests and with the online audience some event that occurred in their lives of a spiritual nature, some moment of epiphany or enlightenment or something that they feel comfortable sharing. And I think that's really important, because I believe, and the majority of Canadians still believe that we are spiritual beings, right? And so I really want to open with that to create an air of comfort and intimacy. And
that's fantastic that you're actually opening up to the live audience as well, so they're going to be able to engage in this question period as well. I love the setup. I love the structure of it, and I love the fact that you, not only how you got this started, but the fact that you are including others in the benefits of the work that you've done. And I got to say, Vince, you and me, we've known each other just a short time now, but one thing I'm really certain of is you and me, we're just regular guys. We just, I mean, we're not doing anything here that's not totally duplicatable, right?
Oh, no, anybody can do that and are doing it. That's as evidenced by these events.
That's why you're the Citizen Spotlight segment today, is because you're just a regular guy who's about to have a massive influence on the outcome, I believe, of the vote in the UCP leadership race in Alberta. And for all of those people that are watching today, if you don't mind me just letting people know this, Vince, is if you're thinking from wherever you're sitting in Canada that this isn't great information for you as well, just remember you're going to be faced with a leadership vote at some point in time in your own home province. And there's a lot to be learned from Vince right now as to what he has accomplished here in Alberta.
Well, I think, thank you, but I don't consider myself accomplishing this. I believe I'm an instrument. I'm a vessel, right?
Fantastic.
and I too have been inspired. I've been inspired by your videos, Doug.
Well, thanks so much, Vince. Again, I appreciate not only what you've done to put this all together, but your time today. And I'll look forward to getting back together with you again. In the meantime, everyone, make sure you check out those post-briefing notes where you're going to have all the details of these events so that you can join in and hook up, add your influence to Vince's and all of his friends to make sure we have a positive impact on the outcome of that leadership race in Alberta. Thanks again, Vince.
Thank you. Thank you, Doug, for everything that you're doing. God bless you.
Well, thank you so much for your attention so far here on the National Leadership Briefing. It has been my pleasure and an honor to serve you today. We are, in fact, on the home stretch, though, so this brings us to our final agenda item of the day. And that, of course, is the importance of those questions that we have to ask ourselves and the decisions that we make on the road ahead. We also want to really fully understand the backdrop or the context within which we are making those decisions and answering those questions. So let's take a look at some of the questions that you and I have to make on the road ahead and the backdrop we're making those decisions up against. First of all, one of the questions that comes to mind is, should I respond? Should I engage? Should I respond to this call of action, this suggestion that I stand up and I stand and unify my voice or add my voice to those others across our nation who believe that parents have the right to raise their children the way they want, or the right of belief and freedom of religion, that we should rise in defense of that, or that vulnerable people within our communities should have laws and policies that provide for their safety and security. And of course, for those all across the nation who have children and believe that future generations should not have the burden of debt heaped upon them by civil governments. Do we respond? Do we add our voice to that group of people, that growing group of people? That's a question that you need to answer. Another question is the authority of parents, is that even important at all? Is that something that is under attack or under siege? Or is my right of belief something that I need to actually defend against, or my own personal right of belief? There's lots of questions like that. We have lots of opportunities to ask ourselves those questions every single month on the National Leadership Briefing. Just last month, there was a call to action for us to consider taking action and contacting our senators about a bill that was going to limit our ability to communicate freely and openly on the internet. And that is a Bill C-11. I'm going to include that information in the post-briefing notes again for you today, because these questions need answers. The question as to whether the plight of my neighbor is enough to launch me into action to stand in defense for their rights of belief and freedom of religion, or their well-being. All of these questions need to be asked, but let's just talk, before we answer those questions, let's spend a moment looking at the background or the backdrop that we're making those questions or answering those questions up against. First of all, behind me, you're going to find a copy of the newest Sphere Authority training template. And you see on that template, you see different governments and different spheres of authority that exist within our society. When you look at the civil government sphere of authority in Canada at this moment in time, what you're going to see is you're going to see civil government going beyond the jurisdictional limits of its authority and encroaching upon the individual, the family, the church, and the marketplace. And so if we do not stand in defense of our right of belief, for example, and freedom of religion, then we might find that civil governments acts in a tyrannical way, even more so than they are already, and pushes and imposes themselves and their authority on the church in Canada. How about the family? In education across our nation, we have seen very overzealous school boards and school board trustees reach well into the authority of the family and tell parents exactly how they feel their children should be raised. So that is the background that we are making these decisions against. There is an advancing belief within government that they should in fact be the authority over the other areas or spheres of authority within our society. So that's one part of the backdrop that we need to make these decisions up against, is the fact, and I'm telling you, it is a fact, that civil government is expanding. And so when you answer the questions about right of belief and freedom of religion, please keep that in mind. Another thing is we need to make the decision up against the backdrop of our faith as defined by the Bible and the scriptures of the Bible. For example, in the Bible, in Matthew 28 and Matthew 22, we find the Great Commission and the greatest commandment. The Great Commission that we would make disciples of all the nations, that we would proclaim the gospel wherever we go. Is our right of belief and freedom of religion important to us? When we ask that question, we need to consider the backdrop of the greatest commandments and the Great Commission that we are given here on this earth. So this is my encouragement to you, is please don't make the decisions that you have to make on the road ahead in isolation or without considering the backdrop. And then there's one final question that I want you to ask yourself, because we're coming up to a very important period of time in our nation where the leader of the Conservative Party of Canada is going to be chosen in the very not too distant future. And we're talking just a few short days from now. And there is going to be a question in your mind, perhaps, if your candidate does not win. If the person who you voted for within that party doesn't win, you might find yourself with the question in front of you as to, well, am I just going to pack up my kit bag and I'm going to go home? Or is that it for me with the Conservative Party of Canada? Or maybe you'll ask yourself the question as to, why do I even bother? Well, please, when you answer that question for yourself, please hold up the backdrop as well. Hold up the things that we know to be true about life and the things that we believe in, and take into consideration the times that we are living in. And ask yourself also if taking yourself off of the table and taking all of your influence away and packing it up in a box and never bringing it out again is a good idea. Because my encouragement to you is that you will make a better decision, a better quality decision about whether it is you're going to stick around and continue to defend the vulnerable and continue to fight for the things that we believe in, not only there, but in all political landscapes across the nation, no matter what the outcome of individual elections are. So anyway, thank you so much for your time today. It has been an honor, again, serving you. I'm excited, looking forward to the next midweek touch point. But in the meantime, I wanted to show you one final thing and give a shout out to a very dear friend who is a new friend of mine, someone who I just met recently. It's a couple, Jeff and Melissa, who did something very kind for the National Leadership Briefing. Here, let me show you this. They contributed this beautiful handmade cedar sign of the Canadian flag, made out of a very old cedar here in our nation. This is naturally stained wood from its origins. And Jeff, with his own hands, put this together. And I just wanted to give a shout out to that family and say thank you very much, because they've contributed this to be a part of the new set, the National Leadership Briefing set that we are constructing. And we're going to make sure that this is very prominently placed in the background behind me as I continue on in the future when we get that set done. So thank you so much, Jeff and Melissa. I appreciate very much that contribution. All right. So until next time, and until we have the opportunity to continue to advance the things that we believe in into the society, culture, politics, and government, as we all come together, rallying around the four pillars and looking for those opportunities, defending against those threats sometimes, please, until that moment in time, know that I will be praying for you, I'll be praying for your family, and I will be praying for this great nation of Canada. Bye for now.